Bringing two young.
No, I definitely didn't.
Just the nuns at the
No.
delivery centre.
Okay.
I'm backing Iona.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome everybody. Welcome to this Otago Regional Council meeting. Welcome to our guests from the LOI Penguin Trust, or our visitors. Welcome to councillors. Welcome to staff. Welcome to anyone from the general public as well. We've got quite an extensive agenda today, and in a moment I will ask for apologies, which I don't think there are any, but anyway, I wanted to just highlight Di, our committee secretary. This is Di's first council meeting, being here to assist us as we work our way through the agenda. So welcome, Di, on behalf of everybody, and I'm sure it'll be a smooth ride. As far as I know, we have no apologies, but we have Councillor Forbes and Laws on Zoom. I can certainly see Councillor Forbes. When Councillor Laws, are you there, Councillor Laws?
Yes, not joined yet.
He will join shortly, no problem. Public forum, I understand there is no public forum. There certainly hasn't been a request for public forum. So moving on to item 3, confirmation of the agenda. We were circulated the additional paper last night, and you now have a copy of that in front of you. So I need to move that this extra paper will be dealt with under public excluded. So the paper is essentially, let's get the right terminology here. This is the, under item 12, we'll deal with it in the public excluded section of the meeting. And essentially it's the ORC submission on the DCC District Plan Variation 2. And the reason why we're dealing with it non-public is the Local Government Act under section 7(2)(g). You can check it out if you need to. But I will move that is added, seconded by Councillor Hope. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Now I'm going to revert back to first names now because I prefer first names. So, yeah, no surprises. Conflict of interest. I just need to declare item 8.5. There is a document signed under council seal. There is one item there that my brother-in-law and sister-in-law are involved in, so I will sit back and I'll ask Councillor Callagher just to deal with that item in terms of you can act as chair for that period, please, just to deal with that particular item. Thank you, Councillor. Okay. Moving on to presentations. So, as I said, welcome to the Yellow-Eyed Penguin team. We've got Trudy, Trudy, who's the Conservation Science Advisor, Sue, General Manager, and Eric, Chair of the Board. So a warm welcome to the three of you. Lovely to have you here. You're going to talk to us about, give us a bit of an update where things are at, and perhaps have a bit of a discussion about maybe future funding or whatever. But we're here to listen, so we're in your hands. Thank you. Just check that microphone is on. Yes, it is. It's working.
Is it working?
Yes, it is.
Yep. Cool. Great. So I think I know most of you, but for those that don't know me, I'm Trudy. I'm the Science Advisor for the Trust. So the plan is today just to update you a little on the current state of Hoiho, to give a bit of background about the operational work that we do and some of the other key parts of my role at the Trust, including research and strategy. And then talk a bit about how our work relates to the Regional Council and the ratepayers and some future priorities. So just a quick recap about Hoiho. So they're an endemic species. So they're only found in New Zealand. They are split into two populations. We have this northern population around Rakiura and the southeast coast of the South Island, and the southern population, which is only on Auckland and Campbell Islands in the subantarctic. They're an iconic species. They're taonga to Maori. They are important to the identity of Otago and Southland, and they're also important to nature-based tourism in our regions. They're a key indicator species, so they're long-lived, they're mobile predators, and that makes them a really good indicator of environmental conditions and change in the environment. And accompanying that, we have a long-term monitoring project that's been running for about 30 years. They're subject to a really wide range of impacts in the marine and the terrestrial environment because they breed and molt on land and then forage in the sea. And a lot of what we know about the birds is from the northern population. So unfortunately, recent seasons have shown a population decline of about 70% on the mainland. So they've gone down to less than 200 pairs on the mainland, about 180 of them this season, 171 last year. So there's a minor improvement on last year. And so this is compared to 2008 when the number of breeding pairs was just under 600. So the graph shows a previous dip below 200 pairs, but just quick to point out here that that was due to a mass mortality event, and the birds subsequently bounced back from that. And before that, sort of our monitoring is a little less reliable and robust. So they've also suffered from poor survival and breeding success. For example, only 0.1 of a chick from a couple of the sites last year. So that's, I mean, it's not enough to sustain a population, let alone grow it anymore. And we're looking at basically any chicks that do survive. Only 13% of those then survive to go on and breed. So it's quite a low percentage of birds that are surviving. So essentially, we're having to put in a lot more effort to sustain this smaller population and ensure a better survival rate. So more staff time and effort in the field. So just for an example, we're now doing 30 visits to each nest in a season compared to 3, which is what we did historically. We are constantly improving our methodology and using new tools. So, for example, fostering of chicks this season and last season is fairly new to us. Disease treatment's also increasing, so we're treating about 100 plus chicks each season with antibiotics. This is both through the wildlife hospital and in the field as well. We are uplifting a lot more birds for supplementary feeding or treatment at the hospital. So about 250 birds were uplifted last season. The season before that was a terrible season and more than 400 were uplifted. And again, just to highlight the work, 70% of the breeders last season had been through rehab previously. So we're sort of looking at, if we weren't doing that rehab, we'd have 30% of the birds that we currently have. So although the numbers are dire, they would be a lot lower if we weren't intervening and doing all of this work. And it's far from an ideal situation, really, but I think there's not really another option until we fix some of the big issues, which are big issues because they're complicated to fix, like climate change and then ecosystem degradation and all that kind of thing. And I think it's important to note also that in places where we don't intervene, so such as Green Island, the island off the coast here, and places like Whenua-Ho, which are logistically hard to get to, chick survival is even lower and the survival of the birds is even worse. So it's not the fact that we're visiting so often that's causing that decline. So as I said, disease, treatment for disease is increasing. So the birds are a lot more susceptible to disease when they're in poor condition or they're immunocompromised or with environmental changes. We have lots of different diseases that have become more of a problem. So avian malaria, for example, emerged as an issue for us a couple of years ago. We've already lost 50 birds to this. We've put in place a big response plan. But with climate change and warmer temperatures and storm events, we get good conditions for mosquitoes, which then leads to issues for the birds. Diphtheria, like I said, affects up to 100% of the chicks in coastal Otago. So this leaves these horrible, cheesy sort of bacterial lesions in the mouth, which then prevents the chicks from breathing or feeding, or they swallow and inhale them, which then causes aspiration pneumonia. We also have unexplained mortalities where there's sudden death, and when we do post-mortems, the symptoms are all fairly consistent. There's a massive red blood cell destruction. We're not sure why this is. There's potentially a toxin related, but even with all the testing, we haven't managed to isolate that. We also, this season, had a respiratory disease syndrome, which caused 43 of our chicks to survive. And again, there was an unknown cause for that one. There's no inflammation associated. They've all got congested lungs. So it's not suggestive of a virus necessarily.
Not COVID.
Hopefully not COVID. We don't need COVID with birds as well. But yeah, so it's
Trudy, sorry to interrupt.
increasing.
Is that picture of that wee chickie
So the bottom left is the
is that
diphtheria.
in the mouth? Yes.
So that one isn't very bad. That's a fairly mild case of diphtheria, but they really do get a mouth stuffed full of gunk when they're, it's not very pleasant. So over the last couple of years, we've been increasing our survey effort just to gather more information about the sites that we don't know very much about. So the big one this season has been Rakiura. So there was a full island survey for the first time since 2008. And unfortunately, that's a similar story to the mainland here, a 62% decline from about 106 pairs in 2008 down to about 40 this season. And Whenua as well, so the island to the northwest, has also declined by about 74% over that time. We also did a visit to Campbell Island as part of a wider, it's called Operation Endurance. So the last extensive count there was back in '92, where there was an estimated sort of 350 to 450 breeding pairs. We only managed to do a localised survey just because it was part of this other operation, but there too there was a localised decline from that particular bay. So it was Norwest Bay that's highlighted there on the right. So it's not a rosy story anywhere else either.
Is the predominant population on the mainland?
So it used to be about 60% of the population in the subantarctic and about 40% around the mainland, so the northern population. But yeah, not sure what the balance is now because we haven't got exact numbers for that southern population. So but there's no, like Sue just said, there's no linkage between them. So the southern population and the birds around the mainland and Rakiura are sort of isolated. There's no intermingling between them. So so another part of my work at the Trust is research, so particularly into different impacts. And my role in that varies from facilitating and commissioning it to, collaborating and actually doing some of the research as well. It obviously involves lots of different organisations. So, for example, here we have been looking at some multi-beam echo sounder trials to look at benthic habitat, some analysis of stable isotopes and stress from feather samples, looking at mosquitoes and passerines as well to look at how the prevalence of avian malaria is changing through the seasons and at different sites as well. There's been an ongoing investigation into the respiratory disease that we saw this year. We've been doing some satellite remote sensing work to look at the sedimentation. Also, lots of microbiome work looking at the genomes of different viruses and bacteria. Hi, sorry.
Interrupting through the chair.
Yep.
Can I ask you a question?
Yep.
So you talk about remote sensing.
Yep.
And you've got to talk about sedimentation.
Yep.
Are you talking things, and I might have this wrong, that's why I'm asking you, Trudy, are you talking like you've had a big flood, so down closer?
Yep.
And you're looking at what those little penguins normally eat, and then the sedimentations come along and wipe out all their good food? Is that what you're looking at? Or something slightly different?
Yeah, so we're looking at, using the MODIS satellite, using a colour imagery and looking to see the extent of that sedimentation plume and where it overlaps with where the birds are feeding. So just for an example, that a plume back in 2018, I think it was, extended to about 30 kilometres offshore. And then because that was combined with a lot of nor'easterly winds that just held that sediment on shore, it was sort of an extended period of time where they were struggling to feed as visual hunters. So, yeah. So I guess another key part is sort of scientific representation on different groups. So I'm a member of the IUCN Penguin Specialist Group. One of our jobs through that was to review all the status of all penguin species. Also do a lot of work with fisheries, so with fishers and industry and researchers through a fisheries information group, but also through the aquatic environment and technical working groups. So looking at indirect effects and direct effects of fishing, tracking birds, and some of the annual planning that goes into the projects there. And I've got some good links with marine science, which is maintained through the honorary lectureship there. There've been lots of presentations since the last time I presented to you guys. So we had a big international penguin conference, which I organised a workshop at and presented at too, but also presentations to the New Zealand Marine Sciences Society, Oamaru Penguin Symposium, Kaitiaki Ropu fairly regularly, and lots of media interviews as well on a range of topics. Okay, so some of the key strategic and policy work that I'm involved in at the moment. So working with the through the Coastal Reference Group at the moment on reviewing the regional policy statement, which has been fun, and there's more coming on that next week. Doing some work with regional councils and the contractors to provide information that feeds into the identifying the significant ecological areas, and attending lots of workshops and writing submissions on relevant policies and strategies. So the New Zealand Biodiversity Strategy there, the National Plan of Action on Seabirds, and really just making sure that the work that we're doing as well is in line with the current sort of scientific advice and policy. We also just did a big review for the status of hoiho for the New Zealand threat classification system. And again, lots of fisheries liaison work as well. So a major part of the strategic work is this integrated program to support the health and well-being of hoiho, and this is across the land and sea environments. So this is actually the first species recovery plan that's been developed in partnership. So it's a partnership with DOC and Fisheries New Zealand and Ngāi Tahu and the Trust. And so we've got a big overarching strategy. That's the document up on the left there. Which provides the direction and the strategic priorities. And we've got an action plan, 5-year action plan, which sits under that, which helps us to plan and prioritise that work. And because of the wide and varied problems that hoiho are facing, you know, it's really good to have that collaboration. And so we have a governance group that provides direction for that programme, and then a technical group that sits below that that develops the programme. And so that's the group that I'm part of. And the strategic priorities that are identified in that are divided into 5 main themes. I'm not expecting you to remember all of these, but yeah, we cover the marine environment, human disturbance, terrestrial habitat, as well as health and monitoring. And I think the key thing here is that it's not just about the penguin, but it's about a whole of ecosystem approach to the work. And each of the strategic priorities that we identify are then supported by a number of actions. So we work closely with a huge number of organisations. I'm not going to list them all because that would take a long time, but here's a snapshot. So it's from councils to iwi, government departments, vets, NGOs, landowners, fishers, a whole range. But in particular, I'd like to thank you guys for funding my position and the university, where I've got the honorary lecture position and work pretty closely with. So now just want to touch on the sort of the work that we do that benefits the regional council. So a key part of my role is really linking research and management objectives, particularly in the coastal environment, helping the regional council to fulfil its mandate to work in the marine environment and providing a better understanding of the state of that environment. Also assisting to look after the natural resources of the Otago region, supporting those responsibilities under the RMA through the regional policy and different plans, so such as the reviewing of the regional policy statement as part of that coastal reference group. Also helping to understand how climate change impacts and how the wider impacts affect Hoiho and that wider environment. So I touched on a few of those earlier in terms of disease, but there's also increased sea surface temperature and flooding and malaria. Also provides multiple opportunities to collaborate with a lot of different agencies, and also working quite closely with some of the staff. For example, the new coastal scientists, we've got fairly similar roles, so working together to sort of, okay, and sort of benefits to the ratepayers, so helping to secure Hoiho as a sustainable tourist attraction, which I'll put it significantly contributes to the local economy. That's probably not as significant at the moment just because of COVID and the border closures, but it is an important part. Understanding the effects of the terrestrial activities on the marine environment and the wider state of the environment, protecting and conserving a taonga species, which is, really important and a sentinel for the state of our oceans and wider environment, and also providing conservation education and information to the public and to the ratepayers through talks and reports and social media. So really like to continue to build on the relationships that we've built up to affect change. And we have prioritised some work for future action. There's actually a whole lot more in the action plan, but working on some coastal spatial planning, looking at those important areas for Hoiho and where it overlaps with other activities in the coastal zone, doing some more mapping of benthic habitat, which is key to the work of lots of different groups. Managing the impacts of climate change, so making sure not only that policy promotes conservation of Hoiho and the habitat, but also managing the effects of it and whether that's flooding or fire risk or disease. Giving some further consideration to effects of pollution and sedimentation and managing these, and also ensuring that there's a species scale predator control in place. Plan is to do a lot more work with fisheries, reducing direct impacts, and also further intervention around Rakiora to see if we can put some effort into improving chick and adult survival there. And so that's it. That's what I've got for you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Sue and Eric, did you want to add any further comment to Trudy's presentation? Right. Well, just on behalf of everybody here, I just want to acknowledge the good work that you do. I personally didn't appreciate the in-depth role that you play Trudy, within, scientific research, the strategy work, the day-to-day interface you have with this organisation, plus your networking, there's a lot going on, obviously. So it's really good to understand that. Questions, Michael?
Yeah, Trudy, thank you very much indeed for that presentation. I much appreciated your contribution to the symposium last year too, which I thought was outstanding. My question is that there seems to be, looking at this whole very gloomy picture really about the Hoiho, nobody's closer to it than you are. It seems to be there's going to have to be a turning point reasonably soon if we're to save the species. And with your judgment and based on your expertise, what is the most likely place for that turning point to occur? Is it in the oceans? Is it in the species? Where can we do a pivot and get that graph going back up again in terms of the number of breeding pairs?
I think it is in the ocean. I think the work that we're doing in the terrestrial environment, we will continue to do, and that's not saying that, that work will need to continue. We need to continue to manage predators and everything else. But it's the marine environment that's been almost, forgotten for, and I think we're just starting to see really the issues there. And it's not an easy one. Sorry, it's probably not the answer that you wanted.
No, down a wee bit.
Yeah.
Carmen, then Brian, then Marion.
Thank you, Trudy. I see before on the screen you've been involved, internationally. You had a conference. Would you say we're in an unfortunate, unique position of awful things happening to Hoiho, or from that international conference, did you find out that there are places around the world where penguins similarly are having mortality rates? Is it the same? What did you, we talk about climate change, we talk about other things, but is there quite a parallel?
So overseas, we're certainly seeing issues globally with penguin species. In fact, all seabird species are declining. But Hoiho kept featuring in this is kind of in the worst state.
Yes.
And it's partly due to the biology of the bird and the fact that you don't have these massive colonies of penguins like you have down in the Antarctic or whatever. But yeah, it's
There's a
dire.
to that, if I may.
Yep.
So you've established another place at the Catlin, which is fantastic.
Mhm.
Would you like to see another place established if you could, or are you pretty happy with the number of, I suppose, homes, hospitals, places that the Hoiho can go quickly to, if recovery's a high chance?
So I think that's really the work down on Stewart Island now, ensuring that we can not only just work on the mainland, but we extend that to Rakiura. So we're doing a lot of work with iwi at the moment to see what's possible, and we've presented some recommendations to them, and so we'll be working on that hopefully to get something in place for the coming season.
Brian?
So what's the issue in this thing?
I think it's many issues. So we have direct bycatch of birds. We also have indirect impacts of fishing. So if you're trawling or dredging the seabed and the destruction that comes with that, you can't expect that the ecosystem's going to continue. I'm sure a marine reserve would help. Yeah.
And is that part of the whole justification?
So yeah, we have been involved through the Southeast Marine Protection Forum, but also identifying those specific areas I think that would help. So there's been a big push recently to look at where those birds are foraging so that we have that information on exactly where the birds are going, to identify those locations that are going to be important.
It sounds critical. We need to get on.
Yeah. But I think because the impacts are so many, you almost need to, have something big to kind of stem the decline, really.
Thank you.
Mary and then Gary.
Thank you very much. It was about, well, I mean, you answered the question about the oceans, but when I talked to Rouani, Little Blues,
Yep.
it was last season when the numbers were really bad, and he talked about the sedimentation and the storm taking stuff out so that the Little Blues had to swim 3Ks, 6Ks to get food. So when we're talking, therefore, about is it marine and warming oceans and all those things, it's not an either or, is it? Because it is about terrestrial.
No, it's about how those terrestrial.
Yeah. I was trying to get responsibility for ORC. I sure as hell can't affect the fishing people, but except for a coastal, what's it face? But we do have things about sediments.
Yep.
If we can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that would make a big difference. So it's not only, those short-term events. It's that, but it's also, sedimentation causing light reduction in the oceans, which means that the kelp beds are
dying off.
Yeah. And so that then is not sustaining fish. And so you've got a number, multiple things going on, basically.
That's it.
Gary.
Resourcing funding, you have funding for multiple years ahead and to achieve what you're aiming to achieve?
I have funding till next February, and then not.
Technically till September.
Right. So what's the ongoing strategy for ensuring funding's available?
So our first approach is to come back to the council to see if there is room for consideration to continue to fund Trudy's position. And I understand through Gavin that we go through the long-term plan process for that to happen. So following this, there'll be public submission period where we'll submit. And at the same time, we're working on other opportunities, but everybody thinks this is a critical position to have, not just for the trust, but for the species and for the organisations that Trudy collaborates with. And you can see that they were numerous. But to get the dollars out of those organisations is a challenge. Yeah.
How much of your funding comes from those other organisations?
So the council funds Trudy's salary, and other organisations pay for the likes of the research and any other supporting work that's required. So, for instance, at the moment we have a technical support person on part-time contract helping Trudy, and that's funded actually through a particular marine science grant from the Department of Conservation. So it's opportunities like that we're always trying to maximise. She's, as you can see from the presentation, her role is really diverse and huge, and so the more sort of technical support we can get in behind her, the better for Trudy.
So is it supplementary? Who coordinates volunteers?
Our
You've got lots of
operations
volunteers.
manager.
Okay.
Yeah.
Trudy, I just wondered about, you made the comment that to sustain the population, which is a lot less than it has been since 2008, it's dropped back. So just understanding why there's a greater effort got to go in for a smaller population, just understanding how that pans out.
Yeah, so we intervene at different stages, I guess, when the pressure's on the birds. So there's certain times of year, so either when they're breeding or at molt. So during molt, they basically need to feed themselves up to sustain them through 3 or 4 weeks of basically not eating. And so if they don't put on enough weight, they're not going to survive to next season to breed. And so it's feeding them during those times at the rehab unit, so identifying that they're in trouble. And so it's all the issues in the marine environment that mean that they can't get a full feed, so if we can get them through that critical period, they can sort of manage to forage for the rest of the year themselves. But it's when you're having to double your weight over a very short period of time, so that's when a lot of the problems come in. And when they're raising chicks, obviously you've got to feed, 2 chicks as well as yourself.
Yep.
And so that those energy requirements are much greater. So it's helping them at those times to ensure that they survive the rest of the time.
Okay. I understand that the funding model that you have with the council is, I think it's a 3-year approach. So I assume when you submit, you would be asking us to consider a similar type funding arrangement going forward. Is that, we assume that? Okay. Any further questions or queries? Michael.
Yeah, just sorry to come in again, but that big 2019-2029 strategy that you had on screen, and you were careful to explain that was a partnership between DOC and Ngāi Tahu as a partnership. Have you any idea how much Ngāi Tahu is actually contributing towards the achievement of that strategy? Or is it mainly a DOC process?
No, it's an equal partnership, and that's the different thing about this strategy. It's so that so people from each of those organisations sit on the governance group and on the technical group. More of the work that gets achieved on the ground is done by DOC and by us. So yeah, I mean, there's a balance, and fisheries are in there as well, and obviously they don't do work on the ground, but they do work in the fisheries space. So it's yeah.
So what does Ngāi Tahu actually do in terms of achieving that strategy?
So I guess they provide some expertise for that.
Support policy. I mean, they're the treaty partner to DOC, so everything that DOC does, they have to work with their treaty partner. So it's about supporting the whole process.
Just on the overarching strategy, would you be able to send a link to us so that we could have a look at the strategy? Just that would be really appreciated.
Apologies, we should have brought it along.
Thank you, Kevin.
But Ngāi Tahu actually don't contribute financially, though, when I look at your list of your supporters with mainland, your main support, and then all the other groups if they don't.
So Mainland are our founding sponsor, but actually the main support comes through the Department of Conservation Community Fund, which at the moment funds 2 full-time positions, but then we've had separate grants outside of the community fund that are supporting other work of the trust. So we've been lucky enough in the last 18 months actually, to increase our staff by 2 full-time equivalent positions, thanks to grants that we've received. And so that's direct operational work on the ground that's directly working with Hoiho, which is fantastic.
So looking at Stewart Island, where it is in decline, but your decline is a lot less, but you haven't got the intervention down there. I'm not saying interventions aren't good, so it just shows me that obviously up here, instead of 70%, if you weren't doing something, it might be quite dramatic what is actually happening here.
Yep, exactly.
So what's the difference between
fewer impacts, I'd say, down there.
Stewart Island and here?
Fewer people, fewer impacts.
Right, so people, not just the ocean impacts, it's a people impact?
Yep.
Really? Yeah.
We better keep moving because thank you. Thank you. No, look, on behalf of us all, thank you to the 3 of you and all the teams that sit below you, including the volunteers. And we look forward to hearing from you through the annual plan process. I think it's the 9th of April to the 9th of May, the submission period. And so thank you very, very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So just moving back to the agenda, can I just hop back to the conflict of interest one? Because I didn't really give anybody an opportunity to make any comment other than me telling you I had a conflict. So just want to ask that question again. Does anyone want to declare a conflict on what's in front of us today?
Don't think so.
All good? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 6, which is the confirmation of minutes. Would someone like to move that the minutes are confirmed for the 9th of December 2020 council meeting and also the 10th of February council meeting? Moved by Marion, seconded by Gary. Any discussion? If not, I'll put those two motions. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Actions. So I'm just going to get back into my... Nothing to note at the actions. Everything's in order there. Okay. Excellent. Okay. Moving on to our first item, which is item 8. Item 8.1, and this is the ORC participation in the Dunedin City Zero Carbon 2030 Alliance. And essentially, so the report provides information to consider whether the ORC will join the proposed Dunedin City Zero Carbon 2030 Alliance, and just noting that the Zero Carbon 2030 Alliance would provide an avenue for considering actions and next steps relevant to Dunedin as part of the Otago Regional Emissions Inventory being prepared in collaboration with Otago's TAs and led by the ORC strategy team. And this is due... the inventory is due to come back to council around May of this year, and the Alliance would also potentially be a partnership model to be used in other parts of the region. Welcome, Amanda. Is there anything that you would like to say in introducing this report?
No, I don't think I've got anything to add other than what you've said. So I'll take it as read, but obviously happy to answer any questions.
Good as gold. And in terms of... if we were to go down this track, obviously next steps would be an MOU coming past council to, I suppose, confirm our involvement going forward and what that role would look like within that alliance.
Yes, absolutely. And so the MOU, once drafted, would also go back to the Dunedin City Council. So they've given in principle approval for this process to, get underway and for discussions to take place. But so there's still a few more approval steps. Underway.
Thank you. Questions?
Michael? Happy
sorry.
to move.
Okay, Michael, Hillary, and then we'll go back to Marion in a moment. I'll just check for questions first.
Thanks. I'm put my hand up to move all 3 recommendations, Mr. Chairman. Also to thank Amanda for this paper, which I found very easy to follow. And thirdly, I am strongly in support of all 3 recommendations on page 17. I hope the council is as well.
I will take that. Those 3. Thank you, Michael. So Michael was moved and seconded by Marion.
Yes.
Okay.
Lovely.
So we'll go back to questions. Hillary, then Kevin.
I'm wondering why, when we have option 1 join and disadvantages, you haven't fleshed out a little bit more the political effect, if you like, of us joining a group that is set up to make a commitment to something without us having decided to make a commitment. I mean, if we sign up to join something, we're signing up to achieve net zero emissions by 2030, and that is actually a big thing to do. So signing up to joining a group to form a committee to talk about it isn't what will happen here. Once we've signed up to this, people will say, but you, the council, signed up to zero emissions by 2030.
Yes.
That's actually a big thing we're doing here that you haven't put as a...
Yeah, I think there's probably, through you, Chair, there's 2 parts to it. So in discussions with the DCC, the way they're framing it up is that they're not. So DCC has got their Dunedin City targets for carbon zero, excluding the
Hygienic.
That one.
Yep, plants and animals.
Yeah, so they've got that one, excluding that target by 2030 and the other one 2050. So what the group is designed to do is for people to help contribute to that Dunedin City target, but then the MOU as it's currently being prepared would not require individual organisations to also sign up to a 2030 target for their own emissions reductions. If you can So I agree that there's currently...
That's not what it looks like. This says this is the goal and we'd be signing up to it. So that would be playing angels on a pinhead games from a political point of view.
I think what the way I read it was that the Alliance would allow us to be involved and have our own goal, understanding that the government have set the 2050 one, and we would independently set our own goal. That's what I understood. But I think the key was around being in an alliance to be able to collaborate and probably take advantage of, work streams, etc., where we could probably share that information rather than working in isolation. But
share knowledge and share expertise and share experiences of what other organisations are doing.
That's not what it says. The goal is to support the Dunedin City's target. This is the goal
for Dunedin City.
The goal of the Alliance is to support the Dunedin City's target of achieving. So
we'll just go to Sarah.
Remembering that we brought our organisational contribution to carbon emissions here, and you did give us a goal, which was working towards net zero. So we do have a goal.
Why when?
I win.
We didn't set a time frame. So we do have a goal that is consistent with what's trying to be done here. It's just that we haven't got that same time frame wrapped around it. But so we are actively going to be working towards that. So I think that's not incongruent with what this alliance is about.
So I'll go back to Hilary, then I'm going to Michael on Zoom, and then to Kevin.
Yes, another thing I would have thought might be in the disadvantages or whatever is yet another joining of yet another organisation that's talking to yet another group of people who are talking to each other and forming yet another report and yet another committee. Doesn't necessarily contribute to reducing anybody's carbon footprint. In fact, if we appointed Councillor Wilson to go along to it, she'd probably increase her carbon footprint enough by the time she'd attended the meeting to overwhelm anything we did once we got there.
So question,
yeah.
Hilary?
The question is that the implication is that sort of there's no downside of this. There's no downside of any sort. And I think there is a downside in that we look like we're committing to something we haven't already committed to. And I think within a time is a crucial part of that. And I think there's other bits that it will cost us, that there's a downside to doing this that makes it less just, oh, well, sounds feel good, like our sort of thing. And I'm just, so the question is why it has no disadvantages really pointed out. Is it because you thought there really was none, or that those other ones don't count really?
Well, I guess this is what we're seeking here is approval to participate in more detail in those discussions of the MOU as it comes about. So, I mean, once the MOU comes back, we would probably include more assessment of that with more detail.
Yeah. I think actually the disadvantage that's noted here is probably the one of most concern, given that we're a regional council, making sure that we don't focus all of our efforts in Dunedin and forget about the rest of the region. Of course, the fact that you've set us the net zero target means that we've got that in mind because it's a regional target. But it is one of the key disadvantages here that potentially, if there's more activity around Dunedin and less activity around other parts of the region, we could get focused very much on a Dunedin-centric opportunity. I guess the other thing is we don't, the other instruction you've given us is that you don't want to offset. So that that also means that we have some limitations in how we are able to manage our reduction.
Thanks, Sarah. Hey, look, can we just keep it to questions as we work through, and we'll go back to the recommendations that have been moved and seconded. But if we just do questions at the moment, I'm going to Michael on Zoom, then Kevin, then Marion.
No, it's okay, mate. I'll do the debate. I haven't got any questions.
Okay. Kevin?
Question would be, does it have, the alliance I think is commendable, but does it have to be called the Dunedin City Zero Carbon 2030 Alliance, and could it be just a Zero Carbon Alliance, understanding that we haven't set a 2030 date, and with the input from our CE and talks we've had, it's around the technologies that we have available to us, would they be in fact, are we setting ourselves up to fail anyway? So that's one question. So could it be named just the Zero Carbon Alliance and work towards that in a separate goal? But the other question is, what is the estimated cost, and what is the estimated direct cost comparison between joining the alliance and completing the initiatives in-house?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Sorry, I don't have direct costs to compare.
Right.
The cost to us in participating would largely be in the form of staff time, in terms of attending the meetings, sharing the information. But each of the organisations that has been approached to participate in the alliance would continue to pursue their own emissions reduction plans. So we wouldn't be able, in terms of, we wouldn't be forced to sign up, to spend more money than we wanted to on what our current plans were around reducing emissions for the ORC.
So as opposed to sending staff to a meeting, and I'm not saying you're not being productive, could we not use that staff time here to actually implement our own initiatives?
Well, I think we would do both, because we've already, as outlined in the paper, so there's the work that corporate services are doing in terms of our own operational emissions that's underway, and then there's the work the strategy team are doing around the regional emissions inventory, which is looking at emissions reductions in conjunction with all the individual TAs, and that work is progressing well, I understand. So all that would keep going. This would just be an added layer of cooperation in the Dunedin City area, because Dunedin City Council are the ones leading the formation of the alliance.
Cost, yeah.
All set. Marion?
It's debate, not questions.
Okay.
Sorry,
any further questions, Brian, and then Gretchen?
I asked that the motion be put.
I want to debate it.
Can I just well, I think we need to have a debate, and to. Well, can I ask your reason for having the motion put immediately?
I've got a busy day and it's straightforward to me.
Okay, I want to hear from Gretchen first. She has either a question or give me a moment or two to think about what you've just said.
Yeah, my question's around building off what Susan said. Quite a good touch on, but sends a really good signal and enables us to maintain some great working relationship. However, there's a much bigger issue regionally in terms of the work that's going on. Assessing emissions, and also, is there an opportunity, or is there some sort of thought of actually doing what Kevin's just talked about and having some sort of regional approach or grouping, or how does that work?
Yes, I think Anne Duncan's, who's manager strategy, is leading the regional emissions inventory work, and what she has sent me is that with the inventory work, they're hoping that will be the basis for a collaborative regional exercise going forward. But it's just a case of we're probably not at we're probably not at that stage yet, and it's still, we're all working together to get that information. This is DCC's initiative for Dunedin, but that's, I guess, why we said that it could potentially form the blueprint of something that we look to model, recognising that this one's DCC are leading the establishment of this and setting it up.
Thanks for that, Gretchen and Amanda. And recommendation 3 seems to signal to me that during discussions, we have the opportunity, I suppose, to assess at that point whether we, are fully committed or not. Then, even after that, we have the MOU discussion. So I suppose there's a couple of points along the way where we could go it alone and not sign up. So I think at this point, at least, as Gretchen said, it at least shows a degree of, or an attempt to collaborate on an issue we're all confronted with, and whether it's the private sector, public sector, everyone's trying to do their bit. And we've obviously got a couple of work streams on the go. So I'm sort of debating this topic now, but
I was going to say that is your debate, isn't it?
Sorry. So Brian's point. Look, I think I'd rather have some debate. This is an issue I think that would deserve some debate. To answer your question, Brian.
Council's going to change the election?
No, possibly not. But I think, put it this way, I'm going to ask for speakers in favour of the motion first, and I'll have the first three speakers, and then I'll have three speakers against,
Not be through.
as speaking against the motion. Okay. So, three speakers. Who's the first one? Marion.
Okay, I support the motion. They mentioned in here the fact of transport, and in particular Dunedin and between DCC and ourselves is very important. And it also involves, of course, the university and the Polytech as users of that transport. So that's one valid topic to be totally involved in. The second thing, sometimes I've sat in here and I've heard people say, so why don't we do this? And it might be about vehicles. So one of the partners in there is the hospital board, which has a hell of a lot of vehicles. We can actually learn, it's a networking you're talking about, from each other, and I think that alone is very valuable to do.
Thank you. Any further speakers in favour? Michael, you're okay?
Reply.
Kate?
I'm going to support this because I think it's a very small toe in the door to see what might come of it. I sat at a Regional Land Transport Plan Committee meeting when we were talking on this side about the floods in January, and I had a farmer say to me that the weather patterns we had in January, 1 inch equals 1 foot of snow, and if that had been a winter event, that would have been catastrophic. Our weather is changing. The farmers are getting that the weather is changing. If we don't start doing mitigation, and this is all this is, we are going to have much, much bigger problems. If I know that the rhetoric from some media is that farms have to change. We all have to change. And while there are measures that are quite substantial, concentrated on by the Climate Change Commission for farming, we need to really send a message that the urban areas will have to do their bit as well.
Absolutely.
And if we don't start looking at how we provide that to get the best ones and the most effective ones with some of the highest employee companies, of the companies with the largest number of employees and workers in them, then we really we're just not facing the reality. It's really hard. No one wants change. But we need to start planning that change. I don't know what will come out of this. The one question I would have for it, if there were a question, is what the governance oversight would be on this committee, as opposed to just staff, because I think we need some of that to be working collaboratively. But I don't want to go there now. We'll see what the memorandum does. But we actually have to start facing the reality of what this looks like and mitigating as much as we can.
Thank you. Alexa?
Well, I agree with Kate, but I think that the fundamental of this whole idea is that these are wicked problems we're facing. There's huge change to happen, and the best way to work through that change is in collaboration with each other. And there is nothing to be lost apart from the transport of our staff between the two offices. And we should be going ahead and working with DCC as best we can.
Thank you. I'll go to Michael, then Hilary. Now, these are against the three motions. So, Michael?
There's a number of things to say about this. I mean, the most obvious is how premature it is. The Climate Change Commission is, in actual fact, consulting nationally on its draft emissions reduction plan, advising the government on how those budgets should be met and whether or not indeed New Zealand's efforts are compatible with global efforts. Now, it's consulting on that now. And that leads to the next issue, which is that this is typical local government, to be honest with you, trying to anticipate and get ahead of a much smarter and centrally based central government strategy, of which we are not aware. So it's premature in a massive way and dependent, and ultimately central government will drive, set the standards as it has with water, urban development, etc., and then regional and territorial authorities will follow. But it would be useful to have that policy framework first. The second is, this is just another talk fest, the way it's set out, bit of gesture and virtue signalling, the practicalities of which are certainly not elaborated upon in this particular paper. But I'm very, very concerned at the fact that if we are going to work in this area, we call ourselves a regional council, but we want to go into an alliance, quote unquote, that not only sets a date on which this should all occur, when even government haven't done that yet, but we're only going to go in with one TA. So Queenstown, the Lakes, Central Otago, Clutha, Waitaki, who are you? If this is a discussion, then the discussion needs to involve the entire region and all the TAs. And frankly, heading off down the Dunedin rabbit hole is not going to, in any way, shape or form, provide any form of regional leadership. I would have thought, just quietly, and as an aside, that Dunedin has some slightly more pressing priorities at the moment than this. I'm sure they have. But I think that we really need to be regionally led or have a regional leadership on this, and going into an alliance with a clear target date, which is actually in the alliance, signals that we've already made a decision, which we haven't even talked about yet in terms of when we would. Can I urge my colleagues, let central government provide the leadership which it is best equipped to do. If we go off down any form of rabbit hole at the moment, we will probably get pulled back anyhow. And I'd rather, we have made massive mistakes in water. We have made massive mistakes in how regional councils have governed the use of land, which now central government is seeking to ensure that we don't make again. This looks like another mistake in the making.
Thank you. Hilary.
I'm concerned about it because it's just Dunedin. I'm concerned about it because there is an executive summary here that says what the goal of the alliance is, and when I say we haven't signed up to that goal and we haven't even talked about it, we hear that, well, it's just sort of a discussion basis, and I can appreciate that that's what it is. It isn't a set in stone thing, because the idea at the moment is it's a memo of understanding. But nevertheless, we've got that there. So if we sign up to it, and I'm speaking like a lawyer here, because when you're looking at what people decide legislatively, you then look at if you can't make head or tail of it, you look at the background of it or what happened before it to see what informed it. And if what informed it says this is what the goal is, then it will be assumed that we were happy about that goal, and we haven't been. And we haven't got any idea of what the costs or our involvement would be if we wait until the Dunedin City sorts out its alliance and sorts out whatever it's doing underneath there, and we decide whether we're going to try and encourage a regional response, or we decide that we're happy to join a Dunedin one once we know where it's actually got to, and once we've had a discussion about that, that would be a different thing. But we haven't had a discussion about whether that's our goal, or we haven't authorised anybody to go along and make that our goal or not make it our goal. If somebody talks about an email of understanding, we don't know what our representative might go along and say to anybody about it. So if we wait till the Dunedin City sets it up and see whether at that stage we want to join, or whether we would rather say, why don't we regionally look? I take Michael's point that it's premature in any case, but I see nothing in this document that suggests that anything we do here would reduce our carbon footprint. And our commitment so far has been to reduce our carbon footprint. Joining this particular, currently not yet completed proposal has nothing in it that says it will reduce our carbon footprint.
Thank you, Hilary. A third speaker speaking against the motions, Kevin.
Yeah, there's just a couple of parts. Is the work we haven't done to decide on 2030. So if that was our goal, I'd be happy to support. I would be happy to support, however, if we came back with a memorandum of understanding that that created a regional alliance, and that we removed that 2030 until each TA or us decided on a particular time frame. I'd be very happy to be part of a regional alliance and work hand in hand with Dunedin to get things going. But it's this 30. That's what we're signing up to. If we were asked to sign up to investigate the possibility of a Dunedin City Zero Carbon Alliance, I would possibly be motivated to say yes. But the fact is that we've got that date of 2030 in there that we actually haven't agreed on, that I'm not sure is obtainable. We should be pushing to obtain that. I've got no problem with that. But just, yeah, it needs to be leading to a regionally based thing right at the very start. So I'm actually, the way it's structured at the moment, I understand the feeling of the motion, but I couldn't vote for it the way the recommendation is.
Okay, so that's three, as I said at the start.
We put the first one separately.
I'm just going to give Michael a chance. Like in a normal situation, after speakers, whoever's moved the motion gets the opportunity to their right of reply. So that applies in this situation. Michael?
Yeah, I think some of the comments that have been made have been fair enough. But what there is no doubt, I'm sure there's not much around this table either, is that climate change and its effects are the issue whose time has come. And there won't be a bigger issue for this council over the next 15 years than the effects and the change. Our residents know that, our ratepayers know that. I think it's pretty well fair to say the world knows that. So any opportunity to advance discussion, particularly with our local government colleagues, both through this forum and through the mayoral forum, should be seized, and I'm sure will be. As they say in the TV commercial, better together. Climate change and its effects will not be solved unless we take an individual and a collective and a collaborative approach. And this is laying the foundations, at least in the Dunedin City Council area, for that to happen. And I hope that Kevin will further advance his thoughts about how that can be built on from there, possibly through the mayoral forum. Kate's views I totally subscribe to, spot on, even though she did take that into the agricultural area, but why not? The view that this is a premature in a massive way, or just virtue signalling, or going down a rabbit hole. I was a bit surprised that the word woke wasn't used there as well, and probably political correctness, because the skeptics will use all of those terms to throw in the face of those who actually want to get cracking and start talking about this and start dealing with this. So I'm hoping that when the motion is put, Mr. Chairman, we'll have an overwhelming support for all three parts of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to go straight to a can't even think of the name for it. Division. Sorry, just to save time. Okay, so Di, do you want to just?
Could you put the first one separately from the others?
Okay, so we're going to have a division. We'll have the first one.
Well, just because the first one says we note that we've been
okay,
involved. So
and then we'll do the next two. Okay.
No, you're trying to confuse the media.
No, not on here. I'm saying you couldn't disagree with the first one.
Yeah. We're online. Okay. So we're going to go through a division just focused on the recommendation 1. So your names will be called out. So just say yay or nay.
No, we're all going to agree on one. It says we've been invited.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. All those in favour?
I'll put the motion. Recommendation 1. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried unanimously.
You can have your division.
We nearly did. Now, is there any request to split up 2 and 3? We're safe enough to deal with both of them with the division. Everyone comfortable? Yep. Okay. Di, we're in your hands.
Okay. Councillor Calvert?
No.
Councillor Deaker?
Aye.
Councillor Forbes?
Aye.
Councillor Hobbs?
Aye.
Councillor Hope?
No.
Councillor Callagher?
No.
Councillor Laws?
No.
Councillor Malcolm?
No.
Councillor Noon?
Aye.
Councillor Robertson? Aye. Councillor Scott?
Aye.
And Councillor Wilson?
Aye.
7 to 5 carries.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Amanda. We better keep moving. Item 8.2, this is the RPS panel recommendations. Okay.
It's exciting. I actually did. Yes. I meant to tell you that actually.
I thought it might be.
Okay.
It's just the date.
He might have to use his casting.
So, okay, just focus on the next item, 8.2. Hey, just to remind everybody, remember we discussed whether elected members were to be involved in the RPS commissioner process, and we said no. And then we have, this is the second paper, I suppose, that aligns with the first one to go down the track of seeking suitable external commissioners. Before you, there's essentially a stepped process. I think on paragraph 12 in terms of how that how we seek nominees, etc. There's also a flow chart in the back of as an attachment in terms of the steps and also indicative dates. Okay, Anita, Gwyneth, is there anything that you want to make comment on? And no?
Happy to take it as read.
Take it as read. Okay. I have suggested to Gretchen and Kate that they are the 2 elected members that to sit on the shortlisting panel, and they were both comfortable to allow their names go forward for that. Okay. Questions? Kate.
The question comes out in paragraphs 13 or 14, I've written all over them, so I can't tell which. But I understand the responsibilities of the freshwater commissioners and their priority areas. Just because you've drafted and you understand the substantial changes that are happening from this RPS to the previous one, have you thought about the skill mix that or is it a question we should be putting to the councillors about the skill mix that may be needed for the commissioners and their knowledge of Otago?
So through you, Chair, we have the EOI sets out the particular skills. It's certainly not, even though it's going to the freshwater planning process, it's not a freshwater focused set of skills. So what we're seeking is hopefully someone who's sat and heard an RPS before, so has a good understanding of the depth and range of issues, and someone that's had some exposure to that. And then we've also suggested someone with some technical or experiential basis to sit on that panel. So we definitely need someone wider than just freshwater.
So I just wanted to take that. Do they need to understand Otago though? Because that's the one thing I'm not quite sure is, and the diversity of Otago. That's something that I didn't think was in there.
So through your chair, one of the roles of the Chief Freshwater Commissioner is to appoint people with knowledge of Otago. So it doesn't necessarily need to be the focus of our recommendations. Not that that doesn't help, of course.
Thank you.
The questions?
Did I hear you say that you'd appointed 2 people?
No, I suggest, and I should back that up a little bit. Both Gretchen and Kate, obviously co-chairs of strategy and planning, both commissioners with plenty of experience, and probably know, well, not know personally, but would have heard of perhaps a number of commissioners that seek or forward their nomination. So I just felt they were 2 suitable.
You only asked them whether they would consider an appointment.
And that's why I asked them. Yes, exactly. Yes. And, yeah, like I say, they were both comfortable. So no further questions. I'm happy to move from the chair. Recommendation 1, 2 and 3, seconded by Kevin. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put those 3.
Sorry, is that with our names on or off? Because I will sit back if it's my name on there. So I wasn't sure if you're...
Yeah, you're happy to nominate and
be moved.
Yes.
Or do you want that? Do you want to make that a number 4?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so then if we have the
I don't know. I'm just.
Okay.
I'm not going to vote for myself.
If we
points and then just put the names in. Sit on the.
That would be better, wouldn't it? Yeah, number 2.
I'm happy for that correction to be made. As a second.
Okay. So right. So the two elected members comes out.
Any names going?
Co-chairs of.
Are you both happy?
Well, I'd be better to be positioned rather than.
No. Okay.
Well, sort of yes and no, because I wouldn't have put you in there because you're co-chairs. I'd put you in there individually.
No, I have moved and given a second.
Yeah.
I should just check, are there any other councillors who would be interested in putting their names forward for the role?
Selection panel.
I'm just
Yes, for the selection panel, sorry.
If someone's sick, I will. That's
okay.
No, I'm very happy.
Oh, so that was a tongue-in-cheek comment, was it?
Well, no.
Alternate's always good.
I'm just wondering whether to have the co-chairs in there, because the reason why I would think that Gretchen and Kate are good is more personal than that. I'm not choosing the chairs of strategy and planning. I would like to choose these 2 because of their who.
Yeah, that was my own personal view, and others will have different views around the. I accept that.
Only the names are in the motion, though, aren't they?
Yeah, there won't be any other commentary.
So it doesn't say co-chairs; it says names. Okay,
no.
Cool.
Yeah.
And Mr. Chair, without saying the wrong thing, the conflicts of interest, there's no conflicts of interest.
Oh, okay.
That's an innocent question.
No, because they're not choosing themselves.
No. Talking about that, about being on the panel.
No, about being in this position.
Yes.
It's just an innocent question.
That's what he's asking.
Okay, can I just ask another question? It probably goes to Gary. The two, Kate and Gretchen, obviously, one from Dunedin, one from Molyneux. Dunstan's not represented.
Either is another one.
Exactly. You comfortable?
I'm comfortable.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Marion.
Yeah, the problem is that I thought that's what you raised, was that if one of the 2 members, look, I'll be blunt, Kate, if you're sitting on a panel on issues to do with fresh water and plans.
So this is a panel to select commissioners to sit on a.
I understand that. The question panel is asked. I asked the question.
Yeah.
So the answer is.
So this is on the basis that these recommendations are passed. Yeah. Gretchen and Kate would sit on a panel, a selection panel. I assume with
half a day on the 14th of April
with a GM. I imagine it will be Richard or Gwyneth. Okay, with Gwyneth. So it's very much that role.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, we note that.
Yeah.
And now the last question I want to ask, do we need to have an alternative?
I need a backup moment. Just
Can I suggest, Councillor, the chairperson be the alternative?
That's Councillor Noon, I think.
Look, I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable with that. If that's the will of the committee.
Can I just speak to that, please, very quickly? And that is that there is no conflict of interest of any councillor on this issue, and I'm also assuming that any recommendation from this panel will come back to the full council for approval or not. Is that correct? Yes.
Correct. Gwyneth, you want to confirm that?
Yes, so through you, Chair. At the end of paragraph 12, what the process proposed is that the committee will nominate their preferred candidates, and that formal approval will come to the full council in May.
Okay. So just going back to Michael, are you happy to move a fourth recommendation that I'm available if one or the other, either
Kate or something.
Kate or Gretchen are unavailable, I'll step into the breach.
Well, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Excellent. Thanks, Gary. You got all that. Done. Yeah.
Getting late in the day, is it?
Okay. Michael Laws moved it. Gary seconded.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the four motions. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carry. Thank you.
Sorry,
Thank you to those who've offered themselves.
Hang on.
I did not vote.
Oh, did you want that
I
recorded?
abstained, please. And I want it recorded, please.
That you didn't vote, abstained or?
Abstained.
Abstained. Okay. Thanks, Marion. Okay. Moving on to item 8.3. Okay. So this is adding. Oh, James, welcome, James. So this is adding the further operative provisions to the partially operative Otago Regional Council Policy Statement 2019. Can I just do a quick summary and tell me if I'm wrong, James? Sure. My understanding with the recommendations is that the first recommendation essentially picks up on all the amendments that have been directed by the Environment Court. And that's the tracked version essentially that is attached.
That's right.
We've then got the clean version, which actually becomes the document going forward from the 15th of March, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yes, that's right.
which is highlighted in the third recommendation. The fourth recommendation obviously revokes the 1998 plan, so end of story. It's finished, done and dusted.
Right.
And then we just note under 5 the outstanding issue with regards to the Dunedin and Port Chalmers wharfs issue.
Yeah,
which is port-related issue. Okay,
that's right.
Okay, is there anything else you want to cover off?
I don't think so. I'm happy to take it
questions
as read and then take questions.
Can I just, for clarification, add one piece of information that may assist? The Environment Court judge that's hearing Plan Change 7 asked us if we would make as much operative as we can before Plan Change 7 hearing started, if possible. It's going to miss by a week, but the intent is the same. So she said it would assist the court if there is one less plan for them to consider when they're considering the appeal. So part of the motivation for doing this is to provide assistance to the court.
Okay, so it's about clarity and okay, going forward. Okay, Hillary, then someone over here, Kate.
I'm happy to move. I was just going to say.
Oh, okay, so we'll go to questions first. Hillary, then Brian, and then Kevin.
Just to clarify in my head, what this is really a technical, not rubber stamping, but endorsement of doing things that have, in essence, been set in place already.
Yes,
in several different reasons, but it really is just coming to this committee because it needs to, not because we're making any substantive decision of any description.
Yes, that's right.
So that everything's decided and beyond appeal.
Yes,
it's just moving it now through.
Yes.
Thank you.
Brian?
Yeah, just so I've got it clear in my head. Why didn't you just sort of approve everything, excluding the ports information, which might have been a number of?
The first time round, you mean?
No.
That's what we're doing.
I thought the ports were still outstanding.
Yes, it is.
Yes, so
Yes.
We're noting that.
except for the ports.
Yeah, so why don't you just simply say that?
It doesn't
We note in the recommended 5, we note that
Yeah.
it's still outstanding.
Yeah, no, it's just
No.
there's a lot of pages, a lot of
Because it's
items
not- it's-
listed.
It's because it's not just talking about the current version of the RPS. You also have to revoke the previous version of the RPS. So there's various parts.
That's a nice simplistic way of putting it.
Which is what not legalistic.
Kevin.
4 and 5.
And you probably have answered this, but my question would be around with our plan, plan change 7 before the court at the moment, how can we actually touch a document that pertains to it? I suppose we've been instructed by the courts to do that, haven't we? If you know what I'm saying, because that document's alive, and yet, which will form part of the evidence, and yet we're tampering with it.
No, you're not.
No, we're not actually, if you know what I mean.
So through you, there's no impediment to when you make something operative. The only requirement in terms of an RPS is that you always have an operative RPS or operative provisions relating to an issue. And so there is no limitation on when something can or can't change through a process, even though there's another process going on.
Good, that's all I need. Thank you. Yep.
No further questions? Someone's going to move it, Kate?
I was happy to move it.
Happy to move the 4 recommendations? 5, sorry. Seconded by Kevin. No further discussion. Michael, you're all okay. Alexa and Michael, Laws, all good?
I'm
All
happy.
good, thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the 5 recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against?
Can I say thanks to the staff, which I
Kerry.
would have had I been given a chance? Sorry, thank you. Even writing the motions, albeit you didn't think they were right, they were legally very, very right, and that would have done my head in alone, let alone the report. So well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all the paper for the reading as well.
No problem.
And my apologies for requesting a hard copy.
If you haven't read every single page of that, I'll be
No,
disappointed.
had I known that was a no, I would have said just leave out that bit.
I could have saved just some paper.
Okay.
What was your carbon footprint?
I was
printing?
going to say, help.
The process is wrong.
Moving on to item 8.4. This is the Local Government Funding Agency Membership Proposal. This report is provided to allow consideration of whether the Otago Regional Council should join the Local Government Funding Agency, abbreviated to LGFA, and to approve commencement of the process for that to occur. And we should also note that the discussion about joining the LGFA was initially presented to Audit and Risk on the 26th of November late last year by Miles O'Connor from Bancorp. And then at that meeting, councillors resolved the further discussion of external borrowing via the LGFA as part of the LT discussions at council level after the new year. And then just recently, last week at Audit and Risk, the subcommittee resolved to authorise staff to initiate the process of joining LGFA, which will require preparation of a statement of proposal amendment to the Treasury Management Policy and to undertake a special consultative process. Nick, is there anything you want to cover off with this report, your report?
Well, that sums it up quite nicely. Just also to add that that the reason why we've brought it here, that this obviously the recommendation of Audit and Risk flows through to Finance Committee, which we didn't get round to actually those recommendations, and then of course that has to then come to council. So that would actually go to the next council meeting. So the issue with that is that means we'd be waiting, another month before we could commence the process and get the joining membership underway. And the other thing is, of course, that even if the recommendations are there, though all these papers are available to you, we're aware that the discussion, that the presentation that Bancorp did back in November was only to the members of the Audit and Risk Committee or Subcommittee. And then this paper, which is what you're seeing now put back in front of council only went to the Audit and Risk subcommittee as well. So although the Audit and Risk Committee has considered this twice and recommends to proceed, obviously we wanted to get more of this information in front of all of council so that you're aware of all of the information that's here in the paper, particularly in the supporting presentation. And it allows us to basically immediately get this underway. The process does take a few months. Obviously, from a LTP point of view, we've got the use of external debt factored into our financial strategy. We don't have to use the LGFA for this. So one of the things of joining the LGFA doesn't mean that we have to use them, but it gives us that option. It's a much cheaper source of funds than using bank funding. So we'd be keen to do that. And this just allows us to undertake the proposal, which we won't, although we're in the LTP, we're saying we're using external funding. This is a separate consultation to join the LGFA. And the reason why we have to do that is because there is some key things that have to be consulted on in joining the LGFA. And one of them is you have to consult through an SCP if council is to effectively start or use a CCO. Now, by joining the LGFA, you have to have borrower notes. They're a small amount, but they could convert to equity. And in the event that they did convert to equity, effectively council would be would be a shareholder in a CCO. So that's why we have to undertake a separate consultative process to join the LGFA. But there's nothing untoward about it. It's just a procedural thing. Council, as you can see, the majority of councils across the country are members of the LGFA. We're by far and away in the exception of those who are not.
Thank you for that introduction, Nick. I'm just going to go to Hilary, Chair of Audit and Risk. Was there anything else you wanted to add, Hilary, in terms of the paper?
Just to provide people with possibly a little increased comfort if they needed any, the risk considerations that Nick has referred us to quite properly, the first two of them are to do with actually using a facility for debt, which we haven't decided to do at this point. So it's the potential for doing that. So it doesn't commit us to having used LGFA for doing so. So those two risks are sort of currently possible or theoretical, but something that we could do if we take a next step. But the third risk is also one of those, and it's the most real risk, if you like, because there's a risk that if you join the guarantee part of LGFA, then you guarantee all the other people's debt too, all the other territorial authorities and other people's debt. However, that one, if you look further down in the next step, is we are reminded that determine desired debt levels and structure and whether guaranteeing or non-guaranteeing membership. So we still have that open to choose one way or the other in any case. So this is a very low risk thing to do. If there's any risk, the risks only come into at the next step, and you do this step anyway, even if you thought those risks were more than minor. I don't think they are more than minor, but even if you thought they were, you would still take this step. So I commend it to the council.
Sorry, I was just checking out the timing of this decision and the fact that we haven't got through finance far enough to actually deal with this item because Audit and Risk were recommending to finance. So I was just checking that out. But you're comfortable, Nick, that we continue, that council actually adopt this even without, I know it's the same group of people, but you're comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable. Yeah, if you approve this now and then didn't approve the recommendation when we're in finance, it would be an interesting decision.
Hopefully it's the same group around the table. So
The reason we didn't was technically we considered that since we're a subset of finance, it would usually do the double hop. But I don't know that it needs to do the double hop.
No, fair enough. Yeah, and sorry, Hilary. That was a discussion. I wasn't. I was doing something important. Any other speakers? Sorry, Gary.
I was just going to say I'm happy to happy to move all three recommendations.
Happy to second it.
Excellent. Seconded by Carmen. Moved Gary. Second Carmen. 3 recommendations there. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you all. Moving on to item 8.5. Gary, this is the one if you could just cover off, because I have a conflict with the list that's in the council paper. So I'll move my chair back.
You have an interest, you don't have a conflict necessarily.
Well,
yeah.
If in doubt.
I know, get it.
Yeah, so it's item 8.5, documents under council seal. Basically, it's just a sanctioning
Happy to move.
item.
Happy to second.
Kate,
If I signed one of them, should I sit back?
Carmen,
No, this is, you're just noting
Right.
this is when it's been used. You've
excellent.
all signed them.
It's moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Kate moved and Carmen seconded. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Gary. Moving on to item number 9. These are the recommendations adopted at our committee rounds. I just wondered whether someone would like to move both those recommendations, 9 and 1 and 9 and 9.2. Moved Gretchen, seconded Carmen.
Yeah,
Sorry. 9, are we 9.1? Sorry, can I, I'm really happy for the strategy and planning and the manihira care and the RPS. I did have a question about the Queenstown transport.
Okay, let's do it separately then.
No, I only whether, because we haven't done the finance and strategy, the notice of motion should be dealt with for that last item here. And I was going to seek your leave to bring that notice of motion from finance and strategy, should have been dealt with by now, to this one, so we can get final, because I don't want to confirm that motion if we're about to consider something else. Does that make sense?
This is a notice of motion in the finance committee.
Yep.
And it was moved by Hilary, and you've got it in the
It's not
agenda.
that shouldn't be there. That's an error. That's nothing to do with strategy and planning.
Okay.
No.
It's in finance committee, and it's a motion that Hilary has moved and has come onto our papers.
It relates to the 8.3. So 8.3 at the bottom there is the one about the Queenstown transport business case. And
Yes, it does relate to something that happened.
yeah. So instead of dealing with it as a notice of motion, can we pull it into this meeting?
Yeah.
Because we're discussing it, and deal with it that way, because these meetings have now changed order.
Hang on, let's just.
Oh, sorry.
No. Okay.
I don't want to vote about something. I don't want to confirm something we may then change. That's all.
Well, it's already,
Change this.
it's already been confirmed at that
I don't
committee, so they'll have to
think it
vote
actually
anyway.
changes it.
It may not change it. Yeah.
So I should do something, quite different. Yeah.
Are we comfortable to box on just with 9.1?
Isn't 9.1 confirming the things that we did on the 10th of February?
The Strategy and Planning Committee.
And once we've adopted those, can we then vote at Finance and Strategy to do something that may not be consistent or slightly different from?
Except that the motion would vote the existing.
It didn't. It didn't.
Yeah. I think they can both sit comfortably in
Okay,
bed
as long as
together,
you're
probably.
sure, and that's why I did send an email. Sorry.
Yep. Well, Sarah's saying yes, that they essentially align or are complementary, as you see.
Okay, if you're happy with that.
Okay. So would someone? Okay, I think Gary and Carmen moved.
Yeah.
We'll just deal with 9.1 first. So that's the resolutions passed at Strategy and Planning 10th of Feb. Put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? carried. And then 9.2, governance and communications and engagement recommendations. And once again, this was also on the 10th of February. So the resolution to adopt the resolutions of 10th of February. What is it said? Oh, sorry. Just we're dealing with 9.2.
Yeah. It goes down to 8.1, doesn't it?
So the resolutions passed on the 10th of February. Governance, Communications and Engagement Committee presented for adoption. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against? Carried.
So, who moved in second?
We can.
Gary and Carmen.
Yep, make it life easier if you like.
That's it. Okay, thank you all. Carried.
Thank you.
Moving on. Do you want to have a 5-minute break?
No, you finish.
Sure? Okay, right.
Yeah, you
We have to clear out the
Moving on to
non-public anyway.
10.2, which is the Chief Executive's report. My report was late. I think that message got... yep.
So you can do.
Yep, it's in diligent.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's not in hard copy. That was all I was going to say. Anyway, we'll hand it over to Sarah. Chief Executive's report, take it as read.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, any queries, questions? People?
Sorry, can I just ask a question? What was the virtual launch of Chi and Palmer inquiries and reviews? What was that about?
Yeah, it was about, it was basically a discussion of a variety of stuff about royal commissions, inquiries, those sorts of things.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Question answers, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
No.
To do with all the stuff that's hitting us.
Yeah.
Virtually.
So virtually.
No further question.
I
Carmen.
just want to ask you, Mrs. Gardner, through the chair, we're going to go together to Zone 6 in Wanaka on the 17th next month of March to do the 3 waters. So looking at this, you actually get to meet quite often, don't you?
Yes.
For your steering committee groups.
Yes.
You mean it's quite...
last year they were once a month.
Yes.
They've moved to twice a month.
A month.
And on the on the intermittent week,
yes.
I'm also part of the communications subcommittee of that steering committee. So I have 3 waters at least once a week.
Wow. Thank you.
All sorted. Okay, so I'd like to move that. I'll move that we receive Sarah's report.
Yep.
Senior Carmen. Any further discussion? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Chairperson's report. Any questions, queries, comments? Someone like to move?
I'll move
receive. Move.
Yep.
Carmen, seconded. Marion. No further discussion. If not, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Report back from councillors.
Yeah, I've just got one that I wouldn't mind just sharing with you, because I still work as a member on the Local Government New Zealand Policy Council, and it's got a mixture of staff and councillors, and they're not all chairs or anything like that. We had a very heavy 4 hours on Monday on the RMA changes, and you know that the RMA is going and it's being replaced by three different acts. One of them is the one that's probably very heavy is the Natural and Built Environments Act. I just wanted to throw this at you. That'll combine 14 regional scale combined plans to replace the existing 100+ district and regional plans and regional policy statement. It's huge. And I just really want to say to you, you think you've got it huge so far. The other thing that I noticed, and this is probably to you, Kate, that there's liable to be not a reform of local government, but certainly a reform of the statements about inside the LGA about purpose and things like that. You know, you're often quoting to me, you're Otago first and not New Zealand and all those sorts of things. Well, quite a few of you do here around the table.
It's mostly me.
That is being challenged. So I just want to throw out the Strategic Planning Act is quite exciting, and that's very new. But I just want to say this. there will be mandatory national environment limits. It's an end to what Otago's done for a very long time. That's over. And yeah.
How do you mean that?
I
You're
can't,
just looking for trouble?
no, I can't think of the name of the word. You know, when you don't set regulations.
Fixed space.
Fixed space. It's the end.
Gone.
It's gone.
No, we do have environmental limits there. It's just, I mean, we're a fixed space, but if you look in our plan, there's limits in there.
Okay, I'm not going to have an argument with you.
No, hang on, Brian. Just let Marion's reporting back.
I'm just telling you that fixed space is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and there's a greater emphasis on national direction and oversight. Listen, people, there was another meeting that I was at in December, and I thought I sort of said something to you about it. Because of Three Waters and because of this, there has been quite a lot of questions asked about, do district councils continue to exist? And if so, what is their role? So we've got 2 years of intense thinking and input into really what is serious stuff. Just want to throw it to you.
Thanks very much, Marion.
Appreciate that, Marion.
Any other verbal reports from councillors? Kate? I've
just sent a link to the report from the Regional Land Transport Plan. It doesn't have the draft. I think they're meant to be open documents available to everyone, but we've just had an issue with which council puts it up, because it was Environment Southland who organised this one. But I've sent you a link to the initial plan. The Regional Land Transport Plan will be coming out for consultation with the community at the same time as the long-term plan. It's really important that they're seen to work together.
Thank you. Alexa.
Okay, thank you, Kate, for attending that meeting in my absence. That's great. I'll catch up with you about that. There's a couple of things I wanted to bring to your attention. Firstly, the climate reference group that I'm on in Queenstown with QLDC. We are preparing a feedback, a submission that either the QLDC will kind of use for their own submission to the Climate Commission 15-year blueprint. And I think that's probably what will happen, but just to let you know that we're preparing that. I note that the OIC transport team have got people coming into our regions to talk to local people about the transport plan. Good to see that happening, the public transport plan. The other thing I wanted to note was why Wanaka. I had a meeting with them earlier this month, and they are charging ahead. They've got 30 employees now. Their model is working. I think it's 139 Wanaka farmers and 100 small landholders, all preparing farm management plans and land management plans and working together. So they're doing a lot. They're leveraging very heavily their money from MPI, which is awesome to see. They've now appointed somebody in Queenstown to start taking the model there, and I think we'll start to see that model throughout the community. So that's really, really good to see. The other thing is Lake Wanaka Tourism and Destination Queenstown are joining a rethink tourism organisation, which is Anna Pollock is running a regenerative course. And I think there's 15 regional tourism organisations around the country joining into that. I'm also joining into that, so they've asked me to be part of that as well. So I'll kind of provide us a bit of a link with that as well. So those are the sorts of things that I've been up to in the last wee while. I'm sorry I haven't written them down and sent them in, but there it is. And any questions on any of those, I'm happy to take either now or later.
Your van has expanded.
Thank you very much, Alexa.
My van has expanded.
Can I ask Alexa a question?
I'm going to go to Brian and then to Carmen.
Sorry, Brian.
I was just going to say that the Otago Catchment Community Group has been doing, a lot of work. I mean, that they are setting up an organisation and all the admin and processes and arrangements to go with that. They just now employed 2 key staff to do the work around the region, and it's really an exciting space. I think in the next meeting of the implementation committee, we'll have a brief report, is my understanding, on progress. From the outside, you might wonder what's going on. It's just taken a huge amount of work to get to this point. And then from now, I'd like to think there'd be some interaction and thinking around the community and region.
Thank you. Carmen.
Thanks, Alexa. I was just going to ask you, can you just clarify for me, the climate reference group with QLDC, is that something you're on personally or with ORC, and you sit on that QLDC?
I sit on it actually with two hats. They asked somebody from ORC, which I think I talked to you about that earlier in the year, later last year. And so, yes, I do have an ORC hat on there, but I'm also considered the person on transport, climate change.
Thanks, Alexa.
I just wanted to add, correct the figures now that I've got them in front of me. The big picture for why they've got 56 farmers on board and 100 smallholders. They're all doing farm plans.
Thank you all for those.
From councillors, much appreciated. No other comments? Okay, so moving on to the resolution to exclude the public, and this is under Lagoima section 48.1. We have 3 items to deal with: confirmation of the minutes of the public excluded council meeting on the 9th of December and also the 10th of February, and also we have the additional paper with regards to the submission from us to the DCC district plan. Someone like to move, Marion, seconded. Carmen, any discussion? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. We'll just need a couple of minutes to disconnect or whatever we need to do.
I'll sit back from the late comer